So you can see in this big cutaway from the hillside here, this is where the dam used to be. It was as high as we're standing now, went all the way across. The project took place last year, and we're looking at it now in its state now with the creek, York Creek, running through it. Hi, I'm Jen Hyman. I'm a civil engineer, and I was the project manager on this project, the Upper York Creek Ecosystem Restoration and Aquatic Habitat Enhancement Project, also known as the Upper York Creek Dam Removal Project. The dam was originally constructed in the year 1900, so it was over 100 years old. It's a really important part of the original water supply for the city of St. Helena and all the vineyards down there.
My name is Erica Almond-Smithies. I was Public Works Director for the City of St. Helena and the project lead for the city. The dam was built to provide water, I think originally for agricultural use, and then it became a city water source. It was brought downstream to the lower reservoir and then treated down lower for the city of St. Helena. It didn't last very long. A lot of maintenance, a lot of sediment buildup, and so then it went basically defunct for years. But the sediment continued to build, and there was several large fish kills over the last few decades. And it wasn't until 1993 that a judgment was made against the city to remove the dam because of the major fish kills.
My name is Brian Bartell, and I was lucky enough to be the lead designer on this project. Yeah, and so the sediment that we keep talking about is one of the main things that we had to deal with in the dam. And as Jen mentioned, there was a lot of sediment built up behind. And part of the restoration was to actually leave some of the sediment behind the dam, as you can see, because the fish need that sediment, that smaller sediment that you can see down here, to spawn.
We embarked on this next 3 years of journey of more art than it was engineering and science, of how would a less invasive project work. And it cost a lot more money on the front end for the city, because you had a lot more biologists, a lot more studies. There was also Endangered Species Act information that we had to do additional studies, making sure that we didn't take endangered species during construction of the project.
One of the things that I thought was super cool is, just to give you an example, so the biologists on this project had to demonstrate that there were no endangered northern spotted owls here. And to do that, they actually had to come out after dark at 6 different times, spaced several weeks apart, and give northern spotted owl calls from the roadside and listen to see if they responded. And that actually worked, and no owls responded. And so we were quite relieved. This is an incredible thing that's happened since the rains this past winter. When we left the site after construction, there was a little creek going right where we're standing right now. And over the winter, all this sediment got deposited here behind our first log structure as designed. This is exactly what we were hoping would happen.
Yeah, this area where we're standing right now is probably, the creek was about 2 to 3 feet below where our feet are now, and this is all washed through as anticipated. And there's a log structure that we installed, and the log structures, they do a couple of things. One is to trap the sediment physically. Another is that they slow the water down, so they allow the slower velocities mean that the sediment settles out here. So we're standing by one of the log structures. We're actually in between 2 log structures. We've got one downstream and this one that Jen's leaning on. This was a redwood tree that was taken off the face of the dam that we reused. And the idea here is for it to slow the water, give us a little bit of complexity in the channel, which are pools and riffles, And we've got a nice little pool that has formed here. And then you can see this is the gravel, the sediment that we keep talking about that has been captured upstream of the next log structure downstream. And this area where we're standing, this is perfect spawning habitat.
We took extra precautions to make sure that these log structures would be anchored during rainstorms when the flows get high in the creek. I don't know if you can, this end of the tree is wedged in front of these rocks. And this end of the tree is bolted to this live tree here. So it's not going anywhere. We needed to convince the regulators that using these bolts was critical to the project. There's not an infinite amount of money to do everything that the permitting agencies want you to do. And it's a good project manager's role to say, okay, I'm gonna invest in having the biologists come out one more time and the restoration designers. Can you really double check all of our log structure designs to make sure these bolts are absolutely essential? Are there any rocks that instead that we can prop the trees up on? So we had one more run through the entire, I think it's like a half mile of where the log structures are designed. And they actually, before these were all built, Brian and his team figured out where exactly they could go. And that extra step, I think, in really showing that we had attempted to utilize all the natural features possible, they let us put the bolts in the end. This is a good time to point out some of the impacts of the glass fire on the project. As you can clearly see, the logs that we placed in the channel, they were previously alive. They're made out of redwood. Redwood is really naturally fire resistant. So even though the glass fire burned everything here, these redwood logs are still in really good shape.
The fire is it can be really devastating to these small streams because it takes away the shading, because you burn the vegetation that's on the banks. You take away a lot of the organisms that actually live in the stream. It can kill off the bugs and things that live in the stream. Usually that's temporary, and today while we were out here I did some looking around and I'm really happy. I see a lot of what we call benthic macroinvertebrates, which are the bugs that live in the stream that form the basis of the food web that the steelhead that live in here eat. And I also found a steelhead trout. I couldn't determine if it was a steelhead or a trout, but it was definitely the kind of species that we want to see here. Okay, one of the things that happened in the fire was that a lot of trees died in the watershed. And one of the goals of these log structures, I'm standing on one of the log structures now, was one of the things that we had done was put a bunch of fine branches to capture sediment. Well, a lot of that burned, but then Mother Nature gave us back some of these filtering properties by dropping some trees, and you can see the top of this tree fell into the channel, and these fine branches that are embedded in the channel are now doing a really good job of capturing the sediment. So even though the fire took away from what we built, it gave back with some of these dead trees, and we see them all on down through this reach. And it's really pretty amazing to see how they're working to do what we had built.
When I was first brought on this project a little over 4 years ago, they were going to have this really by-the-book engineered and biologist, stuff that the regulatory agencies have books on. Like, you're going to put so many steps in, what you see natural rock steps out forming from the natural stream, but they want us to put those in, man-made steps. Well, there was another big dam removal, the San Clemente Dam, that was removed and followed all the engineering. It cost millions of dollars in construction. Well, in 2017, we had near record rainfall, and it washed all the engineering away. And Mother Nature took over, and they really liked the effect of what happened there. So they said, hold off on all the over-engineering of this project. Let's take this less invasive approach of high density plantings, trees, and vegetation, and all these special rock steps, and then see what Mother Nature does on this one.
Normally on a project like this, we'd put in several hundred or maybe 1,000 trees and shrubs along the banks to grow. But on this project, it's a little bit groundbreaking in my experience that we're allowed to actually let the natural regeneration happen. So that's a really exciting part of it.
Dams were and continue to be a really critical part of our water supply solution in California, where we barely have any water down south, more water up north. And we have times where there's too much water during the winter and there's flooding, and then times in the summer when we're parched and there's not enough water. So we have to have dams as part of the solution for water storage. But they do have a finite life, and they do adversely impact rivers and creeks more than anything. And so where they're not needed, they really should be removed. And there's a way to do it and restore it so that it'll get back to where it was originally. So I'm a huge believer in using engineering to help solve humanity's problems. But I'm also a big believer in where it's not needed, let's take it out, and let's preserve wilderness where we can.
We're kind of at a crossroads where we've got decades and decades of degradation to our habitat, and the effects of those aren't always felt right away. It takes a while for those to be felt, and these populations of fish like the steelhead that are so important to this project, it takes a while for them to respond to these negative effects on their habitat. And at the same time, we're starting to experience a lot of changes in the climate. We've got drought followed by years of excessive rain, and these changes mean that the populations that are out there, like the steelhead that I'll focus on here because that's the focus of this project, the steelhead, they have to have some help in negotiating these extreme changes in the climate, and having pristine habitat is the best way that we can help them. And if we're going to ensure that these populations are here in the future, we need to make sure that we do everything we can to take these impediments out and take out the degradation to their habitat.
A total project cost of about $9.5 million now at finish time of how much this project's cost. And over half of that was all the preliminary upfront design and science behind it. So years of work, several public works directors in the process, and several consulting teams. And the ones that got it done were the team that you're meeting today, and it's amazing. It took the whole team.